try and focus as much as we can. It's going to be pretty loud in here. And also, if we start to feel a little dizzy or lightheaded, just kind of relax and go with it. And not a crack or anything, I think you'll be all right. All right, so I'll kind of run you through the history of the brewery. I'll tell you all about our process of making beer here at the brewery. To start the history, we started as a company in 1987. It was co-founded by two guys. There was a guy named Steve Hindy, who was a former war correspondent for Associated Press, and another guy, Tom Potter, who was an investment banker for a company called Chemical Bank. And these guys were neighbors here in Brooklyn. It's about 1986 they came up with the idea of quitting their awesome jobs, which they supported their families with, and starting a brewery. It was a crazy idea at any time, but even more so in the mid-'80s, because it was before the resurgence of craft brewing here in the U.S. And so they were friends with the guys who started the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company on the West Coast. A lot of those guys kind of started at the same time. And when they first started out, they would go to these microbrewers conferences where like a dozen guys would show up. Now there are over 1,000 microbreweries in the U.S. It's really taken off. And Steve and Tom were really at the forefront of that resurgence. And when we first started out, we did 100% contract brewing, which basically means you get your brewmaster, you get your recipe, but you're brewing somebody else's brew house. And we shopped around and found a place called FX Matt Brewing Company, which is in upstate New York, Utica, New York. And it's still today where we do all of our 12-ounce bottling. It's all brewed and bottled upstate. So anytime you see one of our 12-ounce bottles at the store, it means it was brewed about 3 hours north as opposed to here in Brooklyn. We didn't get this building here until about 1996, about 10 years later. And originally, this was an ironworks for the Brooklyn Naval Yard, just a couple of blocks from there. So you can see some of the original brick. There's some original wood beams on the main lobby. And after it was an ironworks, it was a matzo ball factory.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that's funny about to do. I think it's hilarious. And then it was empty for a little bit. And when we moved in, we were the first brewery in Brooklyn in about 20 years. Which is crazy because before Prohibition, there was something like 48 different breweries in Brooklyn alone. This is like something like 50% of America's total beer production was just Brooklyn. And they closed down after Prohibition until Rhineville was the last closed in '76. And when we moved to Brooklyn, we chose the awesome neighborhood of Williamsburg because at the time, in the mid-'90s, real estate in Williamsburg was really, really cheap. Because dirt cheap was about a third what it is now. And it was cheap because Williamsburg wasn't the cool hipster neighborhood that it is today. Like Beacons wasn't here, only the joints on Bedford weren't here. It was actually kind of a rough neighborhood. And so they got a whole bunch of horror stories when it first started out. We had a dude in a ski mask come by after a Friday night happy hour, held us up at gunpoint, made off for like $30,000 in cash. And that was all for all that was stupid to keep that much cash around. We stopped doing that, obviously. We learned the hard way. Somebody randomly made off with a forklift in the middle of the day, which is weird. And it was back in the day when we couldn't afford to lose anything. So Steve and Tom got in a van, drove around all night looking for the stolen forklift, ended up finding it outside of the shady pawn shop and stealing it back, which I think is awesome. We had a lot of trouble with the mafia when we first started out. Sounds weird, but it's true. Basically, in the mid-'90s, how it worked was whenever you built anything new in Brooklyn, you were supposed to write on your contract and payroll that so-and-so did X amount of hours of work, you just make it up, and it was essentially a bribe to the mafia. And everybody knew about it, everybody played by the rules, except for Steve and Tom, they didn't know about it, the contractor didn't say anything. So when the brewery was supposed to be finished, a whole bunch of articles about it in the Times and the Post, and the mafia heard about it, got upset because they hadn't gotten paid, and sent two guys to come over to the brewery and essentially extort money from Steve and Tom. And Steve said, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that, and set off something like 3 weeks of these tense negotiations. And in that time, Steve actually called an old friend of his. This guy used to be a federal prosecutor. And he's in the movie Goodfellas. He puts the wire on Ray Liotta at the end of the movie. This guy plays himself in the movie. And Steve called him up, and he's like, hey, I got these mafia guys who are breathing down my neck, what can I do? And the advice that Steve got from this federal prosecutor was basically just do whatever they tell you to do because you don't really have a choice. So Steve's like, all right, thanks for nothing. And the two guys came back over. They took Steve across the street to the warehouse, emptied the warehouse of people, put Steve in a chair, and one of the guys says, we're going to have to hurt you now. And Steve starts freaking out. The guy starts laughing. He goes, just kidding. We talked about it. We think we're doing a good thing for Brooklyn. It's going to be good for the neighborhood. We're we gotta let it slide. So in the end, everybody kind of became friends, which is weird. They're working security for us right now, which is nice. So in the end, everything kind of worked out. Yeah, we had things go our way when we first started out. Steve and Tom were able to raise about $300,000 from family and friends to start the Brooklyn Brewery. And a lot of those people are shareholders in the privately owned company today. Our logo, we got from a guy named Milton Glazer. He's actually the same guy who designed the I Heart New York t-shirt. Did a whole bunch of Bobby Jones posters back in the day. But most graphic design artists in the mid-80s cost about $40,000 just to come up with a corporate logo. And Steve and Tom only had 20 set aside in budget. So they went to his office and said, no, we got 20 grand, what can you do for us? Anything? The other place said, take the 20 grand, put it back in your pocket, I don't want it. All I want is a small share of your company and free beer for life. So it's written in this guy's contract, free beer for life. It's the greatest business deal of all time. He's pushing 90 now, which is ridiculous. I kind of feel like he's roping us at this point, but good for him. What else? We are the 31st largest brewery in the US, and we're the 15th largest craft brewery. And between here and upstate, we brew about 80,000 barrels of beer every year, which is about 0.8 million bottles. It's a lot of beer. And a lot of people don't know we're an international company. We're in about 14 different countries. We're in Japan, England, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Turkey, Israel, and all over the globe, which I personally think is hilarious because we're not all the way to California yet. That's stupid. We're in like 14 countries in like 22 states. But we're doing this huge expansion. We're getting space on the other side of this wall. We're going all the way to 12th Street, a whole block on the other side of this wall, which will increase our production here in Brooklyn from about 12,000 barrels a year to about 75,000 barrels a year.